Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is the 13th 20K tutorial video. This one was suggested by Reddit user Tusiki, and it was a bass for an artist that I don't remember already, but that's okay. I'll have a link in the description. You'll see what we're talking about. He did link a specific time, but then he kind of said, whatever, any of the basses. And I noticed that the basses in that track were mostly of an average kind. I don't mean the average is in like it was only so good. I just mean that all of the basses were of more or less the same type on average. It was averaged into a single like class of basses. And so I decided just to sort of have a little bit of a talk about this class of basses and how it works. At least, from my perspective. So what it is a sort of like very metallic sounding bass, like this. That was, option A. Option B is. So already that should be pointed out that a big part of this, about how this bass works, is presence of reverb. There's a bit going on, underneath it, but then all of it is being colored more or less entirely by the reverb. Also, a huge amount of chorus, and or phaser. You could work either of those. But I used the internal sounds in Harmonic just because I felt like I could. So how is this whole thing working out? So basically, this is working out through volume automation. The actual wob aspect of it is not a filter. It's actually being controlled by volume. As you can see, these huge channels being foisted into Harmonic. That's because I just went to the volume tab, and engaged the mod X mapping, and then I used this nice double curve type of interpolation. I don't know if I used that word right, but I did, and that's what I came out to. I have two layers going on. I have this one that has the second level detune, harmonic detuning, which brings it to sort of a squarey kind of sound, and one that's just a saw wave to kind of balance out, make sure it still sounds like it's in the right register. I have a bunch of unison engaged, and I set the pitch and the phase based on the fact that I automated the pitch amount to cancel out by the fast. And so this means that having the pitch and phase position has a drastic effect on what the sound actually is, like so. Kind of a huge difference. So that's primarily what's up with that. And I also engaged a prism, and the prism actually has more of a role in this than it usually does. And this is because this is a very metallic sounding bass, and the harmonics not being harmonically in tune denotes a metallic sound. Like once we stop having tonal sounds, like atonal sounds, kind of sound like metally weirdness to us. That's kind of what that sounds like to our ears. So Prism is a very useful tool to that end. That's why there's a larger amount than I would usually have. But I did also automate it back because leaving it on too much kind of screws with things. There's ways to get around that without having to automate it back, but I chose to utilize this option for this particular moment. I also engaged a phaser with the frequency setting. And what this does is it alters the pitch of the harmonics as opposed to attenuating them with volume like the phaser is supposed to do. It's under the special settings in the dropdown, and that's what it does. What else is going on? This is mostly... I'm also automating the reverb's wet amount. At least it was. Oh, yeah. This is so I can still have this sort of metallic result of the reverb coloring the sound, but not spilling over itself, so it sounds too tinny kind of thing. It's kind of in control. As for the reverb has a very small size and a very small decay, but also very high filter content. It's very open, so the lows and the highs are all happening in there. But size and decay are small. That's what's up. That's universal for any reverb. That's how you'll get this sort of sound. I also have this chorus going on, but in the advanced tab, I actually routed the chorus before the distortion, so that's coloring the sound like that. And I kind of like it. And I compressed it, I distorted it, and that's more or less the end of this sound. And so, like, the anatomy of the metallic bass people like to hear is, it's a distorted, chorused and phased, like, detuned saw thing, like a Reese kind of sound. And then it's a volume automation. That's kind of where the modulation comes from. And you can get this to this location. You can get to the sound by using filter automation, but you'll usually end up with something that has like a low Q value, low res value, just because it doesn't sound all that good all the time. And when you hear this sort of bass used in the song, it's usually a very clean sort of modulation, and that's because it's volume automation and not a filter. Or it's kind of filter that's sort of designed to be less harsh and less colorful than usual filter types. Am I doing anything in post? No, I'm not. So this is entirely inside Harmor, and I think I said to explain how this automation works. So I made the automation that was the volume automation, and I wanted the reverb to follow that. So I cloned the automation. I'm going in here and say make unique. Now, whenever you do that, that actually creates a new link to the original thing that you're automating. So if I go to mod X here, which is what I am automating, link the controller. What would happen is that there'd be a link to here, and you suppose you could have that, but you actually no, you don't want that, because we're actually gonna make changes to how that automation clip works to work better with the reverb. So we go in, we go in here, select link 2, and then hit reset and accept, and then that would get rid of link 2. And now this doubled up automation is no longer controlling the volume. So then we want to link the wet of the reverb to that, which is now basically an unclaimed automation clip. It's not automating anything. So then we link it to the reverb. So the way the reverb fader works is that we have a positive and a negative phase. So positive phase adds reverb to the sound. Negative phase adds it in negative phase, which actually sort of attenuates the dry volume to the point where there's only wet. That's what that's for. That's what that's about. So that's why I went for the negative wetness, because this sort of sound has a low dry value. It's all about the low dry values for making the mechanical metallic sound. So that's what we wanted to get. That's what I did. And so the first work there is we have to automate from 50% to 0%, because the automation clip still interprets this whole fader as 0 to 100, as opposed to negative 100 to 0 to positive 100, which is what the fader actually is. So this means that effectively we want to automate middle to bottom. We can't, but there's a faster way to do that than just to manually change everything down to 50%, and that is to go in here and change where the mid and max settings are. Now the mid and max settings are actually just top and bottoms, so it's like this is where the top value is, and this is where top and the bottom value is, and you could actually totally just invert it, and so this would be completely inverted automation. And so what we want to do is we want to make the maximum value, the maximum wet value, to be 0, because that actually means negative 100% is totally wet, right? And then we want the minimum to be 50%, which means actually 0. And so that's why we did what we did here. I hope that explanation made sense. It's just complicated automation, but the basic principle that we're doing here is that we're automating the wet value of the reverb to be on when the bass is on, and then off when the bass is off. This is just prevent, bleed. And if you don't want to prevent bleed, then don't do that. That's all there is to that. I hope this sound made sense to you. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm moving on.